Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 is now streaming in its entirety on Disney Plus and has been going on for a few weeks now. The episodes have been dropping in like multiples per week, so it's been a fun way to watch this entire season so far. This tells an alternate version of Spider-Man's origin story in the universe that we're in right now, where you get to see how Peter got his powers, how he is eventually becoming the web-slinging hero that we know him to be, and dealing with the threats that he is, all while trying to manage the life that he has as a high school student and trying to keep his personal relationships together. And all of it can potentially crumble in an instant because it's a very tough balancing act. Now, if you've been here for a while and if you have heard me talk about Spider-Man before, then you know for a fact that I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man. This is my favorite superhero. I can talk about Spider-Man all live long day, and whenever it comes to most Spider-Man things, I am there day one. I love what the movies have been doing recently with the character. I enjoyed the home trilogy quite a bit. I love the Spider-Verse movies. I think those are absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to see Beyond the Spider-Verse whenever that drops. I'm having a wonderful time with the games on PlayStation right now with that series going on, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. And I'm a huge fan of the Ultimate Spider-Man revamped run going on right now. I think it's fantastic stuff. Some of the best Spider-Man comic book stuff in years. And so this obviously was something that I was excited for. And it continues the trend, because this is a wonderfully done season of TV. And when it comes to Marvel animation right now, I really like these detours that they've been taking into other stuff. Last year we had a wonderful show with X-Men 97. That was one of the best shows of the year for me. And I think with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, they continue to do some really interesting things with the character in a world which is slightly different than the one we've seen so far, but albeit one that is also very connected. There are constantly callbacks and references made to other Spider-Man things that we've seen along the way. There are tons of Easter eggs in there that if you're a Spider-Man fan, you're gonna have a really great time sort of searching for, and every now and then you'll just hear a line of dialogue that will take you back to a moment of time. And all of that is so much fun, but it also makes very clear that this is a version of the story in the multiverse, because there are some scenes that play out almost identically to the version that we've seen in the MCU, but with a few differences. One of the core examples of this is Peter coming back to his apartment and meeting Norman Osborn on his couch, which mirrors almost shot for shot the exact moment in Civil War when he comes back to his apartment and sees Tony Stark. Down to the fact that Left Hand Free by Alt J is playing in the background. So, there is definitely a sense of that to establish that this is still part of, some grand framework that's at play over here. We'll talk more about that stuff in a second. But what I really liked about the show is still making this his own character, his own Spider-Man persona. It's not trying to be Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or Tobey Maguire's, or Andrew Garfield. It's not trying to be a specific type. And once again, it captures that mild-mannered feeling of Peter Parker in a very special way, and recognizes the kind of heroes that Spider-Man is. He is someone who has a level of compassion to him that is probably not with every single superhero. One of my favorite scenes in the entire season, in fact it's in the very first episode, is he stops a lady from robbing a pizza parlor. She eventually confesses to what she's done, and Peter, understanding the story that she's just lost her job and is broke, tries to reason with the pizza parlor guy, like, hey, could you probably let her go on this once? Like, I got you your money back. And in that compassion, he does manage to do that. And that's a Spider-Man thing. He would do that. And I love that the show is sprinkled with moments like that, even when things become more complex as the plot kicks in. And it serves as an origin story to a bunch of characters in the process. Of course, I already mentioned Norman Osborn is in this, which is really cool. And then eventually he is the placeholder to what Tony Stark was doing in the MCU. So instead of that, now you have Norman and Oscorp instead of Tony and Stark Industries. And the way the show manages to have Norman become a huge, core part of the plot, giving Peter an internship at Oscorp and then eventually working with him to, get better at being Spider-Man. I thought that was very nicely handled, and it led to some great dynamics between the two of them. Eventually that expands to Harry Osborn, who Peter saves early on in the series, and then eventually when Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, he becomes a part of wanting to help out too. And again, you're seeing all of it sort of build as it's going on. Even as Peter is trying to, change his look perhaps. Like, hey, I need a more advanced suit. So there are different suit designs that they're playing around with. Some of it seems to be working, but also some of it is just potentially terrifying. Like there's a point where he shows up in this cape sort of thing with wings, and he just like saves a kid, and it might be creepy because it seems to be scaring children. And it's like I think we need to workshop this. I don't think we can use this suit. Eventually getting the Future Foundation suit that he ends up wearing for quite a while. That was very cool. Some of my favorite character interactions though are the ones that are happening in school with some of his closer friends, like with Nico Minoru. I think there's a great dynamic over there, and one character I really end up liking as the series goes on, because there is a lot that's developed with her, and there are secrets to her that eventually you get to know more about as the show goes on. But her entire personality and her back and forth with Peter and with other characters was definitely a major highlight of the show. But for me, one of the best things about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, at least this season, was also giving time to characters who don't really cross my mind as much. For example, Lonnie Lincoln. Tombstone's not necessarily in my, top shelf of Spider-Man characters. Not that I have anything against Tombstone, but it's not the first one that comes to mind when, his name, when I think about it. But this show does a really good job of creating something compelling for Tombstone. And as you see Lonnie go from this, high school, superstar and one who is exceptional at football, suddenly becoming a part of the 110th Street gang in order to help his little brother not go down that path, and sort of, his entire life shifting. It's quite sad because you're seeing that this promising, individual, someone who can do some really, great stuff, it might not work out very well. And while there are still moments as the show progresses where you see the goodness in Lonnie still come through, it might not entirely, the eventual outcome of what Tombstone also does end up becoming is, it's a bit sad. One thing that has been talked about a bit when it comes to this show though is the animation. Now, I can understand why this is a contentious point, because I think in some cases it works very well, especially in all the dialogue exchanges, which there are a ton of in this season. And every single time that's happening, this very comic panel style thing that they've got going on, I think it works very nicely. Where it does sometimes suffer a bit is with some of the action sequences. Because every now and then there are some fast-paced things going on, and because there is that, slightly stuttered kind of, different frame rate thing that they've got going on with some of them, it can feel a little off at times with a couple of the action sequences. There was a little bit of momentum that some of those scenes could have had a little bit more of. You don't really get a chance to have that because sometimes it feels like, the animation doesn't quite match up to the, the kind of stakes they're trying to showcase, I guess, is the best way I'd put it. There's also a couple of times where I feel like, early on, some of the stuff in the background feels a little static. Like, characters are just standing around in the background, not moving, that kind of a thing. But eventually that also clears up a bit as the show goes on and things become a lot more kinetic. So I would say that that's something that they fix up a little bit more as it goes on, but I can see that being something that comes up as you're talking about it. Other characters that you get to interact with along the way, like Mac Gargan, who of course is Scorpion, and he becomes a major adversary towards the end of the season. I thought they did a good job with him, and it's also something that makes sense as again, an origin building point, because it parallels the movies. I mean, in Homecoming, Mac Gargan is there. He's not the Scorpion in that movie, though. In this version, you get him as the Scorpion. So there is that going on. There are characters, however, who do show up that you haven't met in that alternate timeline yet. For example, Otto Octavius is in this one. You've met the multiverse version of Otto Octavius in No Way Home. But in this one, you're getting one who is really still becoming Otto Octavius as you know him. Dr. Octopus hasn't quite entered the scene as of yet. But getting to see a little bit of how he's getting there, and some of his storyline even paralleling some stuff you've seen in, like, you know, most recently the PlayStation games, and that, you know, getting out of the shadow of Norman Osborn, as it were. That was very cool. Matt Murdock shows up for a little bit over here. That was really nice to see. And he's once again voiced by Charlie Cox, which was really cool. So there is a bit of a scene between him and Spider-Man as they're fighting on the rooftop. Really like that too. And when it comes to the other multiverse, you know, shenanigans with Doctor Strange and symbiotes that seem to be attacking, that was also very cool. Like, there's a lot of great elements in here, and again, the you know, sense of, you know, love that's gone into making the show as fun as it is. I thought they did a very good job with it. I also like that it kind of looped back in that fight, because it goes from happening at the Oscorp lab where they're testing that multiverse, you know, gate opener thing, and then it eventually, that fight that's happening, the portal that opens goes to the beginning of episode 1, where the spider comes down through the portal and bites Peter, and it's the spider that they're working on at Oscorp with the blood from Peter after he loses the first fight with Scorpion. So it's like a full circle, quite literally, that happens as to how Peter gets his powers and eventually what transpires next. This is an interesting concept. I thought that was very, very cool. This also seems to be happening at around the same time with events of Civil War being addressed, with the Sokovia Accords being drawn up, and apparently Steve Rogers is on the run, and it's something that he has gone against the Accords because he was trying to help his friend. And if you know, your history with the MCU and stuff, you know what that storyline is. So it's nice to see some of that too. Like I said, there's a lot of parallels that run like that when it comes to the broader scale of what, the MCU has also been doing on the side. This is very much an alternate, like I said, version of that story. And as the season is coming to an end and Peter is realizing more what kind of hero he needs to be and understanding his place in the world and his destiny as, he's having to deal with greater threats along the way, I think it leads to some incredibly poignant stuff, and I really am excited to see where this version of Peter Parker goes from here. I think there are some fascinating places where you can take this Peter Parker story, and I am so excited to see what the future holds for him. I believe they have a few more seasons planned, so bring him on, to be honest. And while I have a few minor gripes here and there with the season, I do think they've done a very stellar job with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I thought it ended very well. I like the shot of Uatu at one point towards the end, which was just to give you that little bit of a, we're in the grander scheme of things, and that the watcher is looking upon everything that's going on. So that was really nice. And I'm just happy. As a huge Spider-Man fan, I'm just quite happy with what this season gave us. And I'm gonna give Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 an A-. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Spoilers were out the gate on this one. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. And hope you guys enjoy the show.